Once we've got to this point where we've got some of the basic information in here, recognizing that much of this we can actually manipulate the graphics of in Photoshop once we export and head into that environment, I think it's important to start thinking about the overall layout of what we're trying to create here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here into our layout view. So remember, this is like AutoCAD's paper space. This is where we're going to set up our overall drawing. Well, for this particular site, I think one of the things that's really important if we're going to begin to design off of this is that we probably need to be somewhere closer to 1 inch equals 80 feet, so 80 scale in our drawing. Well, how would we know that? Again, we can go in and insert a scale bar, and we can go ahead and drop this in. And you can see that right now I'm set up for, that's 0.4 miles is the current scale. So I've got some issues. Amongst them is that I want 1 inch equals to 80 feet. And so how do I get there? So there's a couple of things that you need to do. One of them being that we need to change our units. And so I'm going to change this over to feet because that's where I'm trying to go. I'm okay with having one division here. But something else I'm going to go ahead and do at this point in time is that I would like to go ahead and position my, there we go. I'd like to go ahead and change the overall size of my scale bar. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have it be 1 inch in width. So when I hit apply, what you're going to see is the whole thing just shrank down a whole lot. But I have another problem, so let me go show you this real quick. What I'm aiming for down here, as I zoom in on this, is that I'm aiming to have a scale bar that is as close as possible to 1 inch. And you can see that right here, this side of it is at the 5 on the paper, and this side's at the 6. It's perfect, except the problem is that's not my scale bar. That's my scale bar with the label on it. So what I need to do is I actually need to go in here and I need to go ahead and tell it that what I'm looking for in terms of placement of my scale and unit is that instead of after the bar, I want to tell it that I want it to go above, or in this case I'm going to do below and center. Once I hit this, you're going to see it shift. And so now suddenly I've actually gone ahead and set this up so that this is 1 inch equals, unfortunately, it equals 940 feet. So I've got a problem here. So what do I do? Well, one thing is that I could go ahead and I'm going to zoom out to the entire page. I could go ahead and select my, again, it's data space, it's the data viewer, zoom and zoom out versus my, we'll call them paper space. So paper space, zoom in and zoom out, or layout view. Right, I can go in here and I could go ahead and zoom in and see what I can get done. So that's 1 inch equals 350 feet. It's 1 to 160. There, I think that's what says 1 to 180 feet on that. It might say 60. All right, so I over-zoomed a little bit. Problem being is that, look, now I can't see the entire park. I can't even come close to seeing the entire park. So really what's going to happen is I'm going to have to change my overall layout. So I've actually already done this, so I'm going to allow you to play around with this and see what it takes for you to go ahead and get your drawing set up so that it's actually 1 inch equals 80 feet and that you can see the park. And isn't it great when it all just works out perfectly and everything fits nicely on a sheet of paper for us? Well, I'm guessing that you're finding that it's not quite so easy, and I'll show you that when I developed the overall base map just as a guidance map for the property, I actually went to 1 inch equals 200 feet, and the reason being is that there was no, in terms of overall size, in order to fit it on something that was approaching kind of a standard architectural size and not something that was crazy big, it wouldn't fit at 1 inch equals 80 feet. The problem is that if we get much, if we zoom out much further than 1 inch equals 80 feet, it becomes really difficult to design. Everything becomes so small that you start to lose the difference between, variations between a parking lot and, with, a drive lane with parking stalls and a trail or path through the space. And so That's what we're really aiming for, is a drawing scale that when we get this out, we can actually work with it. So how do we go about doing this? So I'm going to go ahead and just close this out. One way is to actually go ahead and do this as a two sheet drawing, right? We can break it up about the midpoint. And so what you're actually seeing here is that I've gone ahead and set up my scale to 1 inch equals 80 feet. You can see that that basically gets me from the entrance back here to shelter number 4 that we've been meeting at, and encompasses a pretty good stretch of the park. I can then go ahead and pan down in space, and I can go ahead and do a second export where I can go ahead and export out everything from shelter 4 all the way up to Indian Trail, right? I've got to do a little bit of, making sure I'm on the right spot to figure that out. But in general, this is a pretty good connection, so this will get me the information that I need in 2 layouts. But it becomes kind of a pain, because when you get into Photoshop and you're trying to modify and change, and make this look better, you're now having to do the same set of actions twice. You're having to do the same, you're having to go in and cut out white space with the wand and do it 2 different times on 2 different drawings. And it's just a hassle. And so one of the things I'm going to suggest that you do for this, first off, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my my aerial view behind it, is that go ahead and actually set this up at 1 inch equals 160 feet, right? And if the reason for that is that if we know that we are at basically half scale of what we're aiming for, and I believe, I got to go back one more. I believe I was able to fit it all here. Just a couple, I'm just clicking backwards. So this is 1 inch equals 160 feet, and so I can go ahead and zoom in and prove it, right? At least then I know that basically I have a half-size version of the final. And so in order to get this to the 1 inch equals 80 feet, all I really have to do is go ahead and double the size of the output in Photoshop. Don't worry if that sounds complicated. We'll definitely cover that as we progress forward in this assignment. And so now that I'm at 1 inch equals 160 feet, what I can go ahead and do at this point in time is I can go ahead and stop and make sure that the drawing setups, make sure that all the layers that I'm going to use or export out are ready to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and we will pick up again in just a minute by going ahead and adding a little bit of additional information to this map using the digital elevation model. And then we'll be ready to export everything out to Photoshop.